checking out our website. We hope you enjoy this week's message.
In Galatians chapter 6, verse number 7, Paul, writing to the church of Galatia, says this: "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. For he who sows to the flesh will of his flesh reap corruption. But he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. And let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart." In this passage, we see a law that is very clearly explained. I talked with you last week at the beginning about several laws that govern our life and our universe. In this passage, we see in its very literal and physical sense the law of agriculture at work. The law of agriculture is absolutely universal in its scope. It applies equally to every farmer and every gardener in every place and every time throughout human history. It applies both to the young and to the old, to the experienced and the inexperienced. It applies to the wise and the foolish. It applies to the saved and the unsaved. It is the law of agriculture, which is also impartial. It is predictable, and it is unchangeable, just as unchangeable as the law of gravity that we talked about last week. There are simply no exceptions to the agricultural law that says whatever you sow, that you will also reap. Now we see it all the time. Do we have any amateur gardeners in the room? Do we have any professionals? I would consider myself an amateur, not even gardener. I turn everything brown. Right? Anybody else like that? I mean, if it's green and it's lush and it looks great at the store, I'm better off leaving it there. Because I take it home, I put it in the ground, I buy all the stuff, and I mean, it is eaten up with stuff and brown in no time. But what I've noticed too is out in our backyard, no matter what it is that I plant, there always seems to be other stuff that crop up that I didn't plant. All right, now y'all have experienced that as well. Now, somehow did what I plant cause all of this other stuff to grow? No, but that seed was in the ground. Something caused it. I didn't look at a banana tree that I planted last year and see all the other wild trees or things growing up around it and think somehow because I planted that banana tree it must have caused this other stuff. No, the seed was already there. Because the law of agriculture is that whatever is sown will produce that harvest or that fruit. And so it was already there to begin with. That wasn't caused by what I had planted. So the law of agriculture, as Paul explains in this passage, that whatever we sow, that we will also reap. And he says this in verse number 8, "For he who sows to his flesh will of the flesh reap corruption." So today I want to talk to you just for a few moments about some thoughts on sowing to the flesh and what that is and what it looks like. Because you see that what is true in nature as it relates to plants and trees and fruit and those types of things, it is also true in the moral and spiritual realm. That whatever is sown is going to produce a harvest. And whether you realize it or not, every single day we are planting seeds. And those seeds will determine what our life looks like a year from today, or 5 years from today, or even 10 years from today. It determines what our children are going to look like, our grandchildren, the relationship with them, and things like that. You see, although we may attempt
to deceive ourselves. Maybe we attempt to hide the fact that, or acknowledge our sin, rather. God's word is clear. He tells us in verse number 8, he who sows to the flesh will of the flesh reap corruption. So what does it look like, or what does it mean to sow to the flesh? That is simply, just by definition, it's the tendency to gravitate towards sin. The tendency to gravitate towards sin. You know, when we get saved, we put our faith and trust in Jesus Christ, and He cleanses us from our sin, and we now know with confidence that heaven is our home. Sometimes I think it would be so nice if God would, along with the salvation, go ahead and remove the tendency to sin in my life. Right. Sometimes don't you think that'd be so much easier? If you would just, God, if you would just remove it completely from me, then it would be so easy, and I could live for you, and then I could have the abundant life that your word talks about, and everything around me could be just roses and singing all the time, right? Oh, if it were only like that. But you see, when we get saved, yes, our eternity is secure in Christ, in heaven. But we still have that propensity to sin within ourselves, that sin nature that we were born with, that was passed down to us. And the reason God doesn't just take it away is because He does not want robots. He did not create us to be robots. He wants us to choose to live for Him. He says, I set before you two paths, one that's going to bring you blessing and one that's going to bring you cursing. I want you to choose which path you go down. That's why I show you at the beginning two different paths. One is bumpy and uphill, the other is a little bit smoother. Not always perfect, but smoother because you operate under the blessing of the Lord. But our tendency, even for those of us that are saved, still remains to cater to the flesh. Matter of fact, Paul addresses this in the book of Romans, chapter 7, and verse 18, where he says this. Paul says, for I know that in me, that is in my flesh, his parentheses, he says, that is in my flesh, nothing good dwells. For to will is present in me, but how to perform what is good I do not find. The Apostle Paul talks about there being a war or a struggle within him personally. He says, I will to do what is right. In my mind, I want to do what's right. I want to do what's right. I want to do what's right. But then he says, in my flesh, there is this constant pull or constant draw over to sin. And so he goes on to explain in later in the passage that there is this struggle internally with him. And the truth is we all face that struggle today. We have the opportunity to sow to spiritual things or to sow to the flesh. Do we give in to the flesh, or do we give in to the will that wants to do that which is right? A constant struggle. I face it. I know you face it as well. The Apostle Paul did. It tells us in that passage that when we sow to the flesh, when we're constantly giving in to that sin nature that resides in us, it says that it leads to corruption. All right? Now, in just a moment, I'm going to give some examples of seed that is planted and some possible results in the future. Now, if it is your situation, I promise you, I'm not eavesdropping in your home. All right? I'm not listening to your conversations. No one has sent me a private email to say that you needed to hear this. All right? Nor, if you have talked to me about anything, think that I formulated this message for you. Because that's not how it happens. I ask the Lord to give me guidance and wisdom in everything that is said. And He brings certain things to mind. And most of the stuff that He brings to mind, I kind of wish He wouldn't, because a lot of it starts with me, Not all, but some of it, and that hurts when you're studying. All right, so that's where we're at. But before that, I want you to understand the word corruption. The word means to decay, to deteriorate, or ruin. All right? You need to write that down. Decay, deteriorate, or ruin. So he who sows to the flesh will of the flesh reap decay, deterioration, or ruin. Many things that we have and use and have access to and exposure to in this world are good things. But even good things outside of proper context or proper usage can become bad things that lead to deterioration or decay in our lives, right? Food is a good thing, right? But food can deteriorate or decay. Now, some of you, let me ask you this question. How many of you think the expiration date on food is just a suggestion? I know it's more than two of you, so now let me rephrase the question. How many of you think the expiration date on food, really, you're a chef, and it's just a suggestion? The sell-by date, just a suggestion. All right, now let me see your hands again. Who thinks it's a suggestion? All right, there's a few more of us. Okay. How many of you then always do or regularly do the smell test? All right. And if it has just a little twinge, it's okay. Right? I mean, that's what you grew up used to. You didn't know any different. I mean, as a kid, you didn't know that milk was 2 weeks old. You just drank it. That's just what milk tastes like. Right? A little bit of decay, a little deterioration or ruin going on. Hey, it's got penicillin in it, right? Penicillin, that's right. All right, so how many of you do this? I just meant off the cuff. Well, this whole little thing's off the cuff, but I asked I said, how many of you have ever opened something in the refrigerator and there's a little, penicillin growing on the top of it? And you scoop out that which is bad. Has anybody done that? Okay. I did that. I mean, like last month did that. Now, I mean, I didn't at all. I was going to say I didn't tell my wife about it, but she's watching right now on Facebook Live. So, but you know what the only thing, I woke up the next morning, I was thinking, I wonder, all right, so I scooped that off, throw that away, go ahead and eat it. And then I was like, I wonder what tomorrow will be like. Man, the next day I was good. I thought, see? I got a good meal out of it. Didn't hurt anything. Didn't have to waste anything. But starting signs of ruin. I share that to kind of get your attention to show, in life, if we continue to give in to that sin nature, what we're doing each time with that seed that's sowing to the flesh, it's leading to a little bit further decay, a little more, and leading to ruin in our lives. And people think that I can live however I want today, I can do whatever I want today, and it has no bearing on tomorrow, or it has no bearing on 10 years from now, because our world tells us live for today. If it feels good, do it. If you want to, do it. Be your own boss, be your own master. You deserve it. Do everything today. But the Bible tells us to be really wise in how we live our lives, because it does affect the quality of it later on. Let me share with you a few of these. I told you I would. Again, not pointing out anyone personally. But one thing that comes to mind, example of sowing to the flesh that leads to possible decay. One is if you are a person that always demands your own way. It's my way or the highway, Jack. Right? Is that you? Now, last service, people start looking at each other, right? That's not what this is about. But if we're the type of person that's constantly demanding our own way and everyone is going to give in to what I want, then I began to think, if you do that constantly, what does that look like long term in the quality of life? One of the things it does, it decreases, if you're able to have them at all, decreases the quality of our relationships. All right? It decreases the quality of our friendships, because who wants to be friends with someone that it's always their way or the highway? It decreases the quality of our home and our atmosphere and those things. So I think about that person that constantly, everything, it's always going to be about them. Whatever they want, and if they don't like it, they're going to tell you. It's my way, my way, my way. I want this, I want that, I don't like that. Then you begin to become resentful of that person. It deteriorates those relationships. The Bible speaks about this in detail. It also speaks about another seed that we sow is the propensity towards laziness. Okay? Proverbs speaks volumes about being lazy, refusing to get out of bed, constantly making excuses for stuff not happening in your life. Oh, well, it's this, and it's this, and it's this, and woe is me. I would like to get a job, but nobody will hire me, and whatever it is, on and on and on. So if that person has this tendency towards laziness, you're constantly planting that seed of laziness day after day after day. And then you find that later on in life, it's very difficult to survive. It's difficult to find a job, to find any satisfaction in that job. It is difficult to keep the job. And the Bible even says that if you are a lazy person, that really what you deserve is to go hungry, because there is seldom anything more powerful as a motivator than hunger to get someone up, moving, and doing something productive. Let me elaborate on this next one a little bit. Just gave you a couple, and these really all tie in together. But this is as it relates to our marriage. I'm burdened for our marriages in 2019. I always am every year, but I just see that Satan is attacking our families with unrelenting vengeance. He wants to destroy marriages, because if he can destroy this sacred institution, covenant, not even an institution, it's a covenant that God ordained in the Garden of Eden at the creation of mankind. But if he can destroy it, he not only damages or destroys those two individuals, but literally that decay or that ruin can have ripple effects for generations to come. There is a lot of collateral damage that is part of the process if our marriages dissolve, or if they are just miserable. So I thought about marriage and when you get married. All right, so when you get married, you're leading up to that time, and you're so excited, and this is going to be the greatest thing ever, and this person is just going to be my everything, and every day I'm going to wake up just, it's going to be awesome. They're going to meet all my needs, and we're never going to fight, argue, none of that stuff, and whatever, we're going to be there for each other, right? And then the wedding day is over, and then the marriage begins, and then you find out that, hey, that's an imperfect person. Right? Hey, they're not meeting my needs. Hey, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Hey, their breath smells in the morning. Whenever you're dating, I know this to be true of guys because I are one, but whenever you're dating, it's kind of like a job interview, right? I mean, you shower, you dress nice, you talk right, you do all the right things. And then, but then after, if we're not careful, and we're going out of our way, we're tripping over ourselves to serve them, to be a blessing to them, to get to know them, to communicate with them, and to find out what interests them. And let me get that for you. What can I do for you today? And then once you have them, and this goes both ways, it's not just men, but men and women too. Once we have them, then all of a sudden, we can start pulling back a little. Now we can maybe move on to some other conquest, whether it's a career or hobby or whatever it is, but we can pull back and we don't give that diligence that we did at first. And then all of a sudden, it's not about what I can put into it or what I can give to help make this relationship thrive. Now all of a sudden, it's, well, they're not giving to me. They're not meeting my needs. And so each day, and because they're, and I know what the Bible says, but they're not giving to me, so I'm not going to give to them. Each day, when we approach it with that attitude, we're sowing seed every day. And then over a span of time, we come to the place where it's like, I don't love you anymore, and I don't even like you anymore, and we either go see a counselor or we just go straight to the judge so that we can take care of it. But really what we're experiencing is the planting of those seeds all up until this time, whatever it took, whether it took months, whether it took years, we are sowing those seeds that got us to this point. And people will come and tell me, they'll say, well, we don't love each other anymore. Okay? Well, I fell out of love with them. We act like, well, I can fall in love, I can fall out of love. Right? Isn't that what we think? I fell in love, I fall out of love. Well, you don't just trip and fall into love. All right? You got to work at it. You got to pursue that person. You've got to talk to them. You've got to be nice to them. You've got to do all those things that I told you have to do. And then you love that person. Well, the same way, we fall out of love because that's what we're working towards. All right? Don't let that happen to us, guys. Proverbs 27, verse 18 says, whoever keeps the fig tree will eat its fruit. Law of nature again. Whoever keeps the fig tree. Now, how does that apply? That's marriage. Work at it. Cultivate it. And then you eat its fruit. You eat the blessing of it. The joy of it. But it takes sowing the right seed every day of your life. Here's another one, and this may affect some of you. I know it's prevalent in our world with our younger generation and teenagers and early 20s and things like that, about sowing seed and about where people say it's no big deal and it's not like I'm doing anything illegal. But it has long-term and lasting effects on life, and that's the use of marijuana. 29 states plus Washington, D.C. have approved marijuana usage for medical purposes. 9 states, including also Washington, D.C., have it approved for recreational use. Now, as I saw that in a study earlier this week, I thought, hey, how wonderful. So whether it's for medical purposes or whether it's recreational purposes, all of our government in D.C. can legally, go smoke marijuana and then go into session, okay? That's comforting, isn't it? Explains a lot, yes. All right, so I was reading a guy, his name is, he's a medical doctor writing for the Boston Globe, Dr. Jangi. And he was talking about marijuana today and how it's grown, how it's cultivated, how it's literally bred. And it's bred, the ingredient, abbreviated THC. Some of you are more familiar with that than me, but THC is the ingredient in marijuana that produces the high. And it is bred in such a way today that THC is more prominent in marijuana, and the other ingredient that depresses or takes away from the high is decreased. So we've got THC in higher content, the other one, CBD, I think, in lower content. To where Dr. Jangi says that today's marijuana is a lot different than what it was several decades ago. In fact, up to today's marijuana, he says, is 40 times, catch that, 40 times more potent than marijuana back in the 70s. 40 times, by the way it is engineered today. And how it's legalized so many places already, and there's a push for it to be national. Another doctor from Harvard Medical School, Dr. Jody Gilman. She's a professor at Harvard Medical. She published a study back in 2014, having studied young people ages 18 to 25 and comparing side by side behavior and also brain scans of smokers versus non-smokers. Dr. Gilman said that she got a lot of hate mail for her results. And the reason being is that there is very, very big business in the legalization of marijuana. In fact, it is billions of dollars in federal tax revenue alone. So her publishing her medical study was met with great opposition. But what Dr. Gilman found from her pooled group of 18 to 25-year-olds, between those that smoked and those that didn't, she found that those who smoked marijuana, according to her research, had significant abnormalities in the areas of their brain. The specific area of the brain that deals with the emotions, the motivation, and the decision making. Significant abnormalities in their motivation, their emotion, and their decision making. But yet today, people will say, it's no big deal. The government may say, it's no big deal. But science and medicine is already showing, even in the face of the push to legalize across the board, that it is a big deal. And it will have long-term and lasting effects that we yet do not realize. Whatever you sow, that you will reap. Another one that comes to mind is, because it's pushed so heavily on us today, is frivolous spending. Frivolous spending. Hey, if you want it, go get it. What are you waiting for? I mean, the idea, in days gone by, generations before ours, my grandparents, great-grandparents, there was this concept of if you wanted something, you saved up for it, and then when you had cash on hand, went and purchased whatever it is you wanted. That is not us today, right? I mean, if we want it, we go get it. I mean, some of you may go get whatever you want, never even look at the price tag. I don't know. Let's just go get it because I want it. And society tells us, marketing tells us, you deserve it. You've earned it. Live for today, whatever it is. But yet then people find themselves, so they're sowing, not budgeting, not watching what they spend, not saying no to impulse buys or urges. Just get it, get it, get it. And then they find themselves in tens of thousands of dollars of debt. And the reaping of it is the financial stress that goes with that and avoiding collection calls. And always one of the top 2 or 3 reasons given in divorce is financial trouble. Financial trouble. Okay? So then it leads to that as well. The law of sowing and reaping. Here's another one, angry outbursts. Angry outbursts. You know that, and it's not just you, but society in general seems to just live where anger is simmering just below the surface. Just below the surface. Just like a volcano that's lying dormant. And all it takes is the right conditions for that to explode. Constantly just simmering. And maybe you have experienced this in your life. Where, you just have this sense or feeling of anger. And people definitely live lives like that. And what you see the result of it is they blow their top over the stupidest stuff in the world, right? Over stuff that's not going to matter 5 minutes from now. Because, just yesterday talking with somebody who was telling me how he lost it on the McDonald's worker because the food was wrong. And I'm like, really? Just say, hey, I'm sorry, my order's wrong. Can you replace it? Get it replaced? And, but do I have to go all Rambo on somebody because of it? But isn't that how we live life a lot of times? People do. And every time we do that, every time we have that outburst of anger, then that's another seed, and it's another seed. And we can justify it by saying, well, that's just how I am, or that's what was passed down to me. That's not an excuse. It's not an excuse to say, well, I apologized. Now they need to get over it. You're planting seed. And I don't know about you, but that damages a lot of relationships. And here's what I avoid those people. All right? Because I'm like, man, what am I going to say or do today that's going to make them mad? That's no fun. So y'all want me to go talk about something funny again. But trying to help you if you need it. And I don't know if this is any of you, but just recognize every outburst of anger is a seed sown, and it leads to compromised or destroyed relationships later on. Here's another thing that I've seen both sides of the spectrum where someone told me it was no big deal, and now they are reaping consequences far more than anything I could imagine. And that's with sexual immorality. Sexual immorality. Man, that's thrown at us every time. I mean, you can't do anything without having that crammed down our throats about sexual immorality. And so I see specifically, one of the things I was thinking of is in the pornography industry and just how accessible it is today, and how so many tens of millions have been ensnared or trapped by that in their life, and many that would say, well, it's no big deal. No one knows about it. It's not affecting my relationships. It's not affecting how I perform my job. It's not affecting what I do at home or at church or any of those types of things. And we keep feeding that under the guise that, well, it's legal and it's not hurting anybody and it hasn't stopped me from fulfilling my different roles or responsibilities so far. But each time that you do this, you're planting seed. Now, medical research shows that those that give into pornography and keep planting that seed in their mind, that it literally begins to rewire your brain. I read up on this last year when we were talking on another series that we were in. And it literally takes the pathways in your brain and reworks them and rewires them so that you begin to think differently, and your body begins to even respond differently. So that, and so much so, that when you feed that long enough and you're sowing and sowing and sowing, what you end up reaping later on is, and it's been proven, that mentally and physically now you are incapable of having a normal sexual relationship with your spouse, because for so long you have been sowing that which is to the flesh, and now you reap corruption because you don't even have that intimate relationship with your spouse that was ordained by God. So I've seen both of those. I've had the one guy tell me it's no big deal, and the other one goes, man, I have messed up big time, and there's nothing I can do about it now. And how sad it is, but it's something for us to remember every time. Whatever we sow, that we will also reap. Those are just some things I wanted to share with you today. Some are easier or lighter to hear than others, but I wanted to share with you a few of those. Because quite honestly, that whenever we continue to sow to the flesh, we're catering to the flesh. When we easily give into those sinful desires, it's easier to do that a lot of times, we think, than trying to get the Lord's help to withstand it. But I want you to know, God tells us that we have the power to withstand and be planting good seed in our life. In Genesis chapter 4, verse 7, it says this. He was talking to Cain. Cain was a sinner. He murdered his brother. God said to him, if you do well, will you not be accepted? But if you do not well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you. But look at this. He says, but you shall rule over it. God didn't tell him, hey, you're hopeless. He said, sure, sin is deceptive. It's by the door. It's hiding. And it's waiting to ensnare you. But you're not completely helpless, because you can overcome it. You can overrule it. You do not have in your life to live with it or to allow it to have power over you. Now you may say, well, I've tried and I can't seem to help it. some passages that come to mind. One's in 1 Timothy. It says that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power. We have power to overcome that which is of Satan, and of love and of a sound mind. That means discipline. He gives us the ability to overcome if we will just allow Him. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, it says, "No temptation has overtaken you, except such as common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but will with the temptation make the way of escape, so that you may be able to bear it." Now look at that. Again, we go back, as I said at the beginning, why not just take the temptation away? Because God doesn't want us to be robots. But with the temptation, which has the ability to strengthen our faith, because when our faith is worked out, it is strengthened, then He provides the way of escape. When we're tempted to be angry or get into pornography or marijuana, or when we're tempted to withhold that which is due to our spouse, I wonder how often we're looking to overcome it through God's help, through His power. How many of us are looking around for the exit signs, how we can get away from that which is wrong and get over to that which is right? Most of the time we just give in. We go on. We think it's no big deal. It's not going to matter. It's not like I'm that guy. Hey, I'm pretty good most of the time. We can excuse it away. The Lord gives us a warning, and I close with the warning today. Because a lot of times, whenever we begin to get the bad fruit from all the seeds that we've sown, we don't instinctively turn inward and say, "Look what you've done, stupid." Right? Most of the time, our first look is upward. Why me? Why are you allowing this to happen to me? God gives us a warning in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 27. It says, and this is the bad fruit because of the seed we've sown. "When your terror comes like a storm, and your destruction comes like a whirlwind." That means sudden, unexpected, drastic. "When distress and anguish come upon you, then they will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they will not find me." Why? "Because they hated my knowledge and did not choose to fear the Lord. They would have none of my counsel and despised my every rebuke. Therefore, they shall eat the fruit of their own way and be filled to the full with their fancies." So there you have it again in Scripture, the law of sowing and reaping. In that day when you've messed up your life, you may look up and say, "God, why me? Why are you allowing this to happen?" But He will say, "You did not listen to my counsel. And you did not listen to my warnings. And you did not change your behavior according to my principles and my plan. And so now what you're experiencing is the fruit of your own labor."